Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. The Wrath of La Vipera. Nera. How long has it been? Ale's mouth was dry, but sweat dampened his lips. 47 minutes, a voice replied. Closing his eyes, Ale drew in as much breath as his lungs would allow, then let it out in a deep sigh. 47 minutes. It felt like hours. There was no clock on the wall, no sunlight in the windows, no way for him to gauge how long he'd been captive. He would just have to keep asking. He sat in a steel chair, his hands tied behind his back. The room around him was pitch dark, and though impossible, it seemed to be growing even darker. It would still be light outside. He'd been taken just before he was to meet his wife for dinner. But to him, it felt like night. The thought of his wife sent a sharp jolt of worry down his spine. Would she do as expected and try to rescue him? He could hope not, but that hope would be irrational. She would come for him. She was the reason he'd been taken in the first place. The only ounce of hope that remained was the certainty he had that she would not make rash decisions. She would plan. She would prepare. She wouldn't let her emotions fog her judgment. At least, he was pretty sure she wouldn't. He tried to use his brain. He tried to gather as much information as he could, but the room seemed to muddle his senses. The air was thin, hot, and smelled of dust. An attic? No, the floor was cool, hard, concrete. It felt small enough that had they not been tied, he could reach out his arms and touch both walls. But whoever spoke to him certainly was further than that. Their voice didn't bounce off the concrete floor. It didn't reverberate off any walls, but he could tell which direction it came from. They weren't close enough that he could sense them near him, but the room felt far too small for them to be more than an arm's length away. He would have to rely on something else. What could he remember? He had just left the house. His head was down, and he was fiddling with his car keys. He didn't see them coming. He was suddenly flung forward, having been shoved from behind with the force of a linebacker. He braced to hit the ground, but had been caught by two more pairs of hands. One, calloused and rough, covered his mouth as another threw something around the top of his head. It was soft. A blanket? A sweatshirt? Something that could be tied. He had kicked wildly. Tried to pry the hand from his face. Tried to scratch. Tried to bite. But it made no difference. His heart was pounding in his ears, but he heard a car approach. Fear forced his muscles to tighten to the point of pain. He tasted the coppery, metallic taste of blood, but it was from his own cheek, caught in the clenching of his jaw. The sound of a car door sliding broke through the fullness in his ears. A van. He felt his feet lift off the ground, a pain stabbing under his arms where he'd been held. He came down hard on the floor of the vehicle, his face feeling cold where the hand had lost its grip. A scream grew in his throat, but hardly made it out of his mouth before he was harshly grabbed again, the hand returning to his lips. The door slid closed, and he felt the vehicle lurch forward. His hands, sweaty and shaking, were pulled behind him and tied together. Someone spoke from the front of the van, firm and demanding. "Don't hurt him unless you have to. The less damage we do, the better." That should have been reassuring, but he knew he wasn't the target. His wife had made enemies. It was inevitable in her line of work, and he knew the danger. Years with no incidents had given him a false sense of security. He should have taken the time to prepared. A self-defense class or two might have done him some good, or learning to shoot a gun. It wasn't for his wife's lack of insistence. He just kept putting it off. And now it was too late. Surely she had prepared, right? Surely she wouldn't fall for a trap like this. She was clever. He had faith in that. He didn't know how long they'd driven, not for sure, but it was long enough for the hand on his mouth to relax, and for him to know that yelling wouldn't help him. When the van stopped, he'd been pulled out of it and carried through a heavy door he remembered hearing slam. He heard the sound of heavy footsteps on stairs and the echoes that followed. A stairwell, then. He struggled to focus, the shoulder of one of his captors digging uncomfortably into his gut. He tried to shift himself to sit more comfortably, but he found he was held too tightly. There was the sound of unintelligible whispers, another heavy door, and moments later he was lowered to his feet and pushed down onto a hard metal chair. Alessandro Fochetta. It wasn't said as a question. They knew who he was. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of a response. Your wife, La Vipera Nera. How much do you suppose you're worth to her? He couldn't fight them off. He knew that the second they'd assaulted him, but he could keep his mouth shut. He heard his interrogator tap impatiently on something. A table? I'm sure it's hard to place value on things when you're the most successful thief in Los Angeles. Money doesn't mean the same thing to you as it does to everyone else, does it? Silence. Again. Al was sure he'd make it out of this. And if his wife did too, she'd surely have something to say about being called the most successful thief in LA. Successful? Without a doubt. Thief? She'd fume at the label. He found it hard not to laugh aloud at the thought. They were right. Money didn't mean the same thing to them. It meant something far different 15 years earlier, when the two of them survived off bread, peanut butter, 69 boxes of dried pasta, and canned tuna. But now? Did money mean anything at all anymore? It doesn't matter. Once she sends us $20,000, you're free to go. Al felt a smile form on his lips. He tried to swallow the laugh that was threatening to burst from him, but it came out anyway. He heard a clatter, something thrown to the floor. Anger laced his interrogator's voice. What the fuck is so funny? Ale sucked in his lips, trying to stifle his laughter. 20,000. So you've gone and pissed off La Viperanera for $20,000? He fought another wave of laughter, reminding himself where he was. He didn't know these people. They could still kill her. There were plenty of people who'd pay more than $20,000 for her head. You could have asked her for $20,000. She might have wondered what for. But she knows what it's like to be desperate for money. It's what had gotten her into the business she was in, after all. Instead, you decided to kidnap her husband and hold him for ransom. No, I don't think she'll give you the money, even if you really were just going to let me go. I think she's going to kill you. He felt a rush of cool air as the man stood. You better hope she makes this easy for all of us. And with that, he was gone. Ale leaned back, feeling the cool steel of the chair through his shirt. It felt nice. Wherever they had him, they hadn't bothered to turn on any air. He wondered what plan his wife would cook up, and let himself imagine it for a few minutes. The silence was broken by footsteps on the hard floor, and he felt someone lean over him. His breath quickened, but he forced it to slow. Their hand gripped the cloth at his head, and he felt a rush of cooler air against his forehead as it was removed. He opened his eyes, expecting to take in a view of the room. But it was complete darkness. He didn't hear the person retreat, but he no longer felt them. Next to him, how long has it been? He was suddenly aware of how dry his mouth was. Half hour, a voice answered. It wasn't his interrogator. It was too shaky, too unsure. He sounded young. Someone roped into a task that was way over his head. Ale almost felt sorry for him. He didn't know how long his wife would take. Part of him hoped it wouldn't take long at all. But part of him knew that the longer it took, the more solid her plan would be. In the meantime, the room seemed to suffocate him. Sweat beaded on his face. He could feel it slide down his neck. He hoped he'd be conscious when she finally did come. He felt as if he was swaying, but in the darkness, he couldn't quite tell. How long has it been? 47 minutes. It had to be close to an hour now. He would have to prepare himself for hours longer. He wished he had a drink. Suddenly, a wedge of light illuminated the room as a door swung open. Al turned away, unaccustomed to the brightness. Through squinted eyes, he took in what he could of the room. The walls were covered with foam squares to dampen the sound. The only furniture was the chair where he sat, and an office chair that sat parallel to him. He could see someone standing in the corner, still bathed in darkness. The person who'd been keeping track of time. How had he done so? In the dark. There hadn't been the light of a phone, at least that Al had noticed. A frantic boy entered, his face pale and drenched in sweat. Cut his hands free. We need him. She's here. She's inside. He looked over his shoulder as if expecting her to jump out at him. The man in the corner was clearly shaken by the words, jumping forward to cut the tie at Alay's hands. Inside. How did she get inside? Darwin was guarding the... She shot him. She didn't even say anything. She just came out of nowhere, shot him, and forced her way in. He sounded as if he was fighting back tears. Al wasn't the vengeful type, and under most circumstances, neither was his wife. He'd be lying if he said he didn't feel at least a little bad. So what are we going to do? Give him to her. That's what she's here for, isn't it? Ayla felt their fear, though he wasn't sure why. He had been them, or at least similar to them. He had been a terrified 20-year-old, not sure where his next meal would come from, not sure what he would have to do to make rent. These two certainly didn't seem the masterminds behind this plan, regardless. No, that was the man who'd interrogated him. A man old enough to know better. A man arrogant enough to think he could kidnap Alessandro Fochetta and live to tell the tale. And with an extra $20,000 in his pocket. The man who was in here before. The one who asked me questions. Who is he? They froze, or as near to freezing as they could get while still shaking. His name! I need his name! There was more force behind his words now. They shifted uncomfortably on their feet. Leon Metzger, Ailey nodded. With the door open, he could hear someone yelling, and the crack of a gunshot. I can find my way from here. He left the room, closing the door behind him. Sparing them could be dangerous, but killing them would be senseless. Metzger was the one he wanted. Plus, he could easily give them $10,000, and he was sure they'd do whatever he asked. He could remember when 10,000 seemed life-changing. The hallway outside the door was like that of a parking garage, only narrower. It was concrete on the walls and floor, with large, orange-tinted lights along the ceiling. He went toward the commotion. This wasn't a massive operation, half a dozen men at most, and 2 of them were in the room he'd just left. How many stood between him and his wife? He broke into a run, hoping the next person he ran into would be her. Another gunshot rang out, the sound bouncing its way down the halls. He was close. He turned a corner to see his knight in black, bulletproof armor, a seething glower on her face. Her expression immediately brightened as she hastened to him. "Are you all right? Are you hurt?" She looked him over, seeming afraid to touch him in case he was injured. I'm fine. I'm assuming you are too." He poked playfully at the bulky vest she wore. She nodded, but her face grew serious again. "How many were there?" She started down the hallway, 4 at most. He would tell her the truth when she didn't have a gun in her hand, and she wasn't searching for men to kill. Leon Metzger, he's the one in charge. I've taken down 3, so that leaves Mr. Metzger. He wouldn't charge at the woman with a gun. So where is he hiding? Metzger didn't give them the chance to wonder. He appeared down the hall as if on cue, turning and confidently leaning against the wall. There she is, the famed Black Viper herself. You really are as fearsome as they say, aren't you? Honestly, I didn't. Another gunshot, then another, and another. Metzger crumpled to the floor like a thrown rag doll. All heard his wife sigh heavily, from relief, he was sure. She turned to face him, taking him into a strong embrace. The Velcro of her vest scratched at his face, but he didn't care. He was safe. She was a criminal. She drew attention and danger, but so long as she was there, he knew he was safe. She pulled back, tucking the gun against her back in the waistband of her pants. "Are you sure you're all right?" She moved her hands along his arms and chest, as if checking him over. "I'm okay, really." He held a hand to his stomach. "I'm kind of hungry, though. Starving, actually." She laughed, wrapping an arm around him and leading him towards the exit. She paid the lifeless bodies no mind as they walked past, and all did the same. "We still have enough time to get to our dinner reservations," she said cheerfully as he pulled open the door for her. "Actually, I'm really craving pasta. The dried pasta we used to get, with the jarred sauce from the dollar store." She gave him a questioning look, but only for a moment. Yeah, that sounds perfect." The Odyssey, as the sea tosses the Odyssey between its mountainous waves like a ping-pong ball. It's all I can do to keep one hand on the rudder. She's in bad shape, and I'm not much better. Ugly, purple-blue bruises stain my arms and sides from the amount of times I've been thrown against the edge of the boat, with wind stinging me with its spiteful embrace, and rain blurring my vision like tears. I can hardly see a foot in front of me. Although it wouldn't be much if I could, the whole ocean from the waves ahead, the Odyssey to the horizon, is frothed up in a frenzy of movement, and everything looks the same. Another wave crashes against the side of the boat, and she tips sideways. My legs slip out from under me. I'm hanging, arms stretched high over my head as I hold on to the rudder. The Odyssey is almost still, stuck in the uncertain midpoint between falling right way up or upside down. I clench my eyes shut and breathe in deeply. My stomach clenches as I try to hold in the air I'll need when the boat gets overturned. The vicious wind assaulting my ears stops me from hearing the wave that turns us over. My head hits the deck. I lose my grip on the rudder. My senses flood with water. I try to keep a clear head without opening my eyes. Hopefully, the hundreds of storms I've been in before have adequately prepared me for this. It's what I think every time, but I never know until the storm has passed and I'm still alive. Under the surface, the current's still the same. It tosses me from one wave to another. I grope around for a handhold. I must know this deck enough to find one. But within the rage of the storm, I can't place my thoughts steadily enough to get a clear picture of the deck above water. And I plan to spend as little time as possible studying it from below. After what was probably minutes rather than hours, but was, in either case, too long, I manage to grip something. It's a kind of pole, thick, so that I have to use both hands to hold on. My lungs raise a tentative whine, a plea for my mouth to open. Not yet, I tell them. Previous storms have taught me I'll have to wait until the fury is over before I upturn my boat. In the meantime, I'll have to find my way onto the bottom of the vessel to catch a breath and try not to slip off until the storm has passed. I claw my way to the edge. My eyes are stinging from the exposure to salt water and from how tightly I'm clamping them together. There's a flame alight in my lungs, and I fight the urge to open my mouth for just 1 second to put the fire out. I grab the end of the keel and try to push myself up, but it's too wet and slippery to get a firm hold. The waves slap me against the boat. My mouth opens involuntarily to groan in pain, and I clamp it shut. Too early or too late. Water has managed to creep inside my mouth, but air hasn't. Clinging desperately to the edge of the keel, I wrap my legs around the rope that's always coiled on the end of the deck, not daring to open my eyes clench my knees together and try to pull the rope up to me. It slips. I only just catch it with my feet. Suppressing a yelp, I force myself to remain calm. Panicking could make me drown. Trying a different tactic, I use my boots to spread the rope out. I have to let go of the keel with one hand so I can hold it. I hesitate, then shake the reluctance out of my head. Indecision could make me drown too. My lungs burn as if they're packed with ice. My left hand slips, and I take the opportunity to grasp the rope. Pulling it upwards, I grab the keel again, this time holding the rope between two fingers. A lull in the waves lets me take a shaky breath. Just enough to keep me going. I try again with my right hand. Letting go of the keel, I grip the rope between two fingers. I fiddle with it until I've got a good grip. Then pull my hand up to grasp the keel again. This is always the hardest part. So far, I've always managed it. But there's a first time for everything. If this doesn't work, I'm dead. I can't help the thought. I shove it away, recalling the face of my wife and daughter. I need to live, at least for them. Gathering my courage, I pull my hands up, bringing the rope with me. It goes taut, and I stop myself, breathing a sigh of relief. It would only waste breath, tugging the rope upwards. I haul myself onto the bottom of the Odyssey and allow myself a breath. My lungs are still burning, but it's bearable for now. Only one more job. Taking a deep breath, I lay on my front and force my head underwater. I don't waste time tying a double anchor bend around the closest rail of my boat. Finishing it, I drag my head out of the water and quickly tie the other end of rope around my waist in a bowline knot. I pull myself back out of the water and treat myself to a well-earned breath. A few drops of salt water splash past my open lips, but at least I'm not drowning anymore, lying uncomfortably on my front. I stretch my arms and legs out to improve balance. I can feel my face turning red from being pressed against the keel, so I turn it sideways. One eye is too squashed to open. The other is squinted for maximum balance of sight and clarity, given the waves that continue to assault me until the storm passes. I'm stuck like this. Afterwards, I can safely overturn the Odyssey. I can only hope it won't happen before I've untied myself. But for now, all I can do is wait. Storm of duality. Not again. Not so soon. Margaret's whisper carried over the silence of the house. With a fierce grip, she bit her remaining fingernail, tearing a piece off and causing the skin to bleed. Margaret stood at the window as the sky brooded, thick with the weight of an impending storm. Dark clouds churned in slow agony, twisting and folding over themselves as if writhing in torment. This storm, she knew, would continue for days. Long, agonizing days. A sharp gust of wind rattled the glass, and she flinched. The leaves outside skittered like restless spirits, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. The first patter of rain kissed the roof, soft, almost deceivingly gentle. She, however, saw through the deception. Soon, the downpour would come, the sky would open, and the world would drown in its sorrow. She pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. It was happening again. The slow, creeping descent. The shift within herself that she feared most. Margaret felt strangely linked to the storm. A tether that bound her to its fury, its anguish. As the clouds thickened and the thunder rumbled low in the distance, something inside her twisted. The familiar chasm in her mind yawned open, and she felt herself slipping into it. Her childhood marked her first awareness of this connection. A violent thunderstorm had raged outside, and she had found herself gripped with a restless, frantic energy. It was as though the storm had crawled inside her and filled her veins with its electric charge. Her mother had found her hours later, curled in a corner, whispering to herself. "It's not me," she had murmured over and over. "It's not me." Adulthood brought no change to that feeling. The storm, the darkness, the shifting inside her. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That's how it felt. Two selves coexisting in fragile balance until the storm tipped the scale. A peal of thunder cracked across the sky, and she clenched her hands into fists. The rain was coming harder now, sheets of it hammering against the house with merciless force. The wind howled, shaking the trees, their skeletal branches clawing at the sky as she moved from the window. The walls felt like they were closing in, the shadows distorting her sense of reality. She reached for the kettle with unsteady hands, trying to focus on something tangible, something real. But her fingers fumbled, and the kettle clattered to the floor with a deafening crash. Margaret gawped, stumbling back and slamming into the counter. The impact sent a jolt through her body, but it was nothing compared to the dread twisting inside her. The storm's grip extended beyond the world outside. It clawed at her very mind, unraveling her sanity, thread by thread. She could feel herself fracturing, her thoughts splintering under the immense pressure, as if something dark and insidious lurked just beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to take control. The whispering started then, not from outside, not from the wind, but from within her own head. Just surrender. It will be easier. She squeezed her eyes shut, rocking her head. No, why fight it? You know this is who you are." She pressed her hands to her temples. Her breathing was increasing, like the thunder and lightning. Her ears were buzzing, overpowering the storm itself. Margaret sensed her body was detaching from itself, like her reality was crumbling to the floor. It was the storm inside her, the darkness waiting to consume her. Another crack of thunder split the sky, and a bolt of lightning illuminated the house in a stark, white flash. Margaret reconnected with her body again and felt the surge through her veins, like she poked a fork in a light socket. She glimpsed at herself in the kettle's reflection. Her dilated eyes, the size of marbles, and her pale, almost unrecognizable face stared back at her. Then she realized the storm had taken her. She staggered backward, her hands clutching at the edge of the counter. She needed to hold on, to ground herself. She didn't want to become that person. Darkness prompted unthinkable actions. It whispered to her, feeding her fears, twisting her thoughts until right and wrong blurred together. It promised relief, power, and escape from the suffocating weight of reality. But she knew the cost. She had seen it before, felt it claw at her mind, urging her to surrender. Her fingers gripped the counter tighter, nails biting into the surface. She had to resist. She fought despite the overwhelming urge to give up. Letting go felt incredibly tempting. To release pent-up emotion, to embody the storm's will. She could feel the power coiling in her chest, raw and untamed. Another roar of thunder, another crash of rain. The wind shrieked, rattling the windows as she thought they might shatter. Margaret let out a strangled sob. "Please, stop." But storms don't listen. Their anger is unrestrained, and they destroy. Tears burned fiery trails down her cheeks. She staggered forward, pressing her forehead to the cool glass of the window. The rain distorted the world outside, turning everything into an indistinct blur. Just like her mind, she had to hold on. She had to be strong and fight. With a trembling breath, she forced herself to move, to step away from the window. She grabbed the kettle from the floor and set it back on the stove, the simple motion anchoring her. She filled it with water, her fingers still shaking, but moving with purpose. The dizziness was overpowering her, while vibrations pulsate at her temples, and brief electrical shakes interrupted her thought process. She would endure the storm, both outside and within. But what awaited on the other side? Would she emerge unscathed? Or would the tempest leave its mark, reshaping her in ways she could never undo? Having put the kettle back on the counter, Margaret closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She made her way to the special place, the soundproof area, with images of forests, waterfalls, and seascape. She made sure it was stocked with water, nuts, and protein bars. This served as her refuge, untouched by inner or outer turmoil. Here, seemingly serene, she escaped chaos. Briefly rediscovering herself, Margaret cast a final glance at the furious storm, its howls clawing at the windows like a desperate specter. As she forced the door shut, the latch clicked into place, a thin barrier between her and the chaos beyond. Yet, just before the silence settled, the storm's final utterance slithered through the cracks, a venomous whisper threading into her mind. "You can never escape me. I'll always be with you." A tremor ran down her spine, but she clenched her fists, grounding herself. The storm could rage, it could scream, but she refused to let it claim her. Not tonight, and for tonight, that was enough. In the alley, you never know when or exactly where I, the destroyer, will strike. I respect no one, people, animals, houses, or possessions. Hear me roar as I approach. Dark clouds and sky announce my coming. Witness my violence. Trees fall, glass shatters. Puny man-made cars flip over. Roofs are ripped off. Light poles are bent. There is no stopping me. A storm is coming, Mitzi. I can feel it in my old bones, Gladys Moore said to her cat that morning. Better turn on the news to see if the weather people know anything. Gladys had lived in Grand Island, Nebraska all her life. No stranger to storms, she knew what to do and had ridden out several during her lifetime with only major yard cleanup. She wasn't that worried. She had a cellar, but she hadn't met an F5 yet. Mitzi vigorously licked her ears. Inside the canal, pressure was building. Far away in the distance, her sensitive hearing picked up a rumble of thunder. She raced around the kitchen, her fur standing on end and her tail puffed out. If her person knew what was good for her, she would slide underneath the bed soon. Well, that is, if she would fit. Rusty Booman heard the news. Same county, same general vicinity. "A twister is headed our way," Rusty yelled at his brother, Charlie. Clothes and shoes were jammed on. A camera was slung around Rusty's neck. The back screen door slammed. Charlie gunned the Chevy farm truck as dust and gravel flew up behind them on the road. Rusty switched the radio on and listened to the newscaster. "Turn toward Alda," he said to Charlie. Just then, his phone began flashing. "This is the emergency warning system. Prepare for tornado near Alda and Grand Island." Charlie peered up through the truck window at the sky, where greenish-gray clouds amassed. A stiff wind whistled through gaps in the insulation around the truck's doors. Suddenly, the gale held its breath. The eerie silence momentarily chilled the simmering excitement of the young men. Charlie pulled to the road's shoulder. "This is it, Russ. Get the camera ready. Our names will be all over TV when we get a close-up picture of the funnel coming down. They will say something like, 'Young storm chasers capture tornado touchdown,' and we'll be famous." They jumped out of the truck, and Rusty adjusted his camera's f-stops. Later, what was actually said was, "Young storm chasers killed near Alda." Their pickup truck lay in the ditch next to the road. Who knows what happened to the camera and the pictures? They were never found. "Foolish young men," says the destroyer. "But there is no law that says that people can't be idiots. They got a warning. Even looking at the signs in the sky should have told them I was imminent. No remorse on my part." As soon as Gladys saw the darkening expanse above her house, she put on her sturdy shoes and hung a whistle on a chain around her neck. She called her neighbor, Torrance Fielding. "You headed for shelter?" she asked. "Need anything?" "Yep, going down to keep the spiders in the basement company. Got everything I need. You?" "I'm fine. Just got to sit it out." Her tornado safety list was checked. Food, warm clothing and blankets, a flashlight, first aid kit, her meds, and water. She put Mitzi in her carrier with a soft cloth on the bottom. After several trips downstairs with supplies and her beloved cat, she closed the basement door behind her. A transistor radio would give her news. She put on her bicycle helmet, lest something hit her in the head, well away from the small windows. Gladys planted herself in a chair with Mitzi on her lap. Mitzi hated being confined and restless. She squirmed and meowed. Outside, the wind rose and shrieked and howled like a possessed animal while they waited and waited. Fear shivered down Gladys's spine. Then a silent lull, somehow more frightening, like the storm was gathering strength for its next onslaught. The house began to shake. Hail rattled down outside like bullets. She covered her head and Mitzi with a blanket. Slam, bang. They could hear wood splintering, objects falling and crashing to the floor above them. Paint cans plunged from the basement shelves, and some ruptured, spattering the cement with color. A suffocating pressure bore down on Gladys's chest. Rising dust made her cough. Her heart pounded, and her breath came in gasps. Panicked, she yanked the covering off herself. Bright flashes of light could be seen through the shattered window panes as the tornado passed over them. Debris from outside whooshed in through the broken windows. Mitzi attempted to claw her way out of her prison, but Gladys held her fast. Had hours passed? Again, an ominous hush after the storm had passed over them. But Gladys sat still for minutes, squeezing the carrier against her shaking body. Mitzi let loose a yowl. "We're safe, sweetie." We made it. Slowly, Gladys stood. Her shoes crunched over broken glass, blown clear across the floor. Avoiding the paint puddles, she grasped the handrail with one hand and climbed the stairs to the door leading back into her house. It would not open. She jiggled the handle. Nothing. She set Mitzi down on the stairs and pushed her weight against it. Wouldn't budge. No way could she crawl out those dinky basement windows. Anyway, she'd be cut to pieces. Wasn't there a hammer down here somewhere? Yep, it had fallen from its perch on the pegboard. My strength isn't what it used to be. These doors were made solid. Not such a great thing right now. She kept hammering without much result. Sweat rolled down her face. She should be glad she'd survived. But now being trapped was scary too. Mitzi wasn't helping. Her plaintive cries grated in Gladys's ears and made her more on edge. She set her weapon down and rubbed her forehead. To her surprise, her fingers came away bloody. When had she got injured? Now it hurt. But when she looked down, her eyes rested on her whistle. She blew with all her might, while Mitzi flattened her ears. Hours later, when Torrance was able to exit his own house, which had been flattened by the big oak in his yard, he hurried to Gladys and heard her now faint whistle. He shook his head in wonder. One wall with a door stood. Otherwise, her house was a pile of rubble. "I hear you, Gladys," he shouted. "I'm going to get you out." The destroyer laughed as he barreled down the countryside, wreaking devastation as he went. Even the people like Gladys, who planned ahead, aren't completely safe from me. I demolished her house. She's homeless now. But like others, she might rebuild. Spawned by a thunderstorm, I'll gather strength again soon and plunder this same area. Crazy people. There's a reason why they call it Tornado Alley. Flight 12/7. It's strange how the most pivotal moments of our lives often begin in the most mundane places. For me, it's the cramped bathroom of Trans-Pacific Flight 12/7, 35,000 feet above sea level, when the first tremor rips through the cabin. At this moment, I'm just another passenger with a spike of anxiety from the turbulence we just experienced. Making the smart faucet in the bathroom require all of my focus, completely oblivious to the fact that fate has begun its countdown. Why does everything always come down to timing? 5 minutes earlier, and I would have been safely strapped into PODEC, connected to my assigned neural interface, already synced to the emergency protocols. The bathroom mirror catches my reflection as the cabin lights shift from institutional LED 2A to a pulsing amber hue. My heart stutters. I know that color. How people used to fly in these things Before EES came around, I'll never understand. They were basically flying in an air-conditioned metal tub with wings. Everyone that flies on Trans-Pacific knows that color. Catastrophic system failure, and the emergency evacuation system has begun. In the old days, this would have meant certain death. But in 2147, commercial aircrafts have evolved from their fragile predecessors. The Airbus Quantum Aeroline doesn't just fly. They adapt, transform, and when necessary, shed their parts like a snake shedding its skin. I lunge for the door. One of the only remaining places on board that doesn't have its own EES protocols. My fingers, slipping on the handle, slick from the soapy water that just cleansed my skin of any dirt, germs, and other microorganisms that I collected while on board. My savior might be my demise, I say out loud to myself, spurring myself into hurried movements, wiping my hands down my shirt, hoping to gain more traction on the door handle. Fuck! I scream as the handle and door refuse to move. The status light begins blinking an infuriating red as the message, "Door locked for catastrophic system failure protocol," scrolls across the ticker above the door lock. What usually tells passengers which water closet is in use is now taunting me with my impending fate. The first automated announcement over the intercom sends ice racing through my veins. My lungs are straining against my rib cage as I try to calm my panicked breathing. Attention, passengers. CSFP number 7 has been initiated. Please remain in your seats, in your designated pod. Quantum separation will begin in 3 minutes. 3 minutes. The word echoes around in my head, like a ball bouncing through a pinball machine. Under normal circumstances, that would be plenty of time for the pods to detach cleanly, their individual gravitational fields engaging as they descended safely to the nearest emergency landing zone. But I'm not in my pod, trapped in my tin can coffin, in the one section of the plane designed to stay with the main hull, the section that goes down with the ship. My mind whirs as I try to remember the schematics video they played at the beginning of our flight. The ones no one ever pays attention to because yada yada, remain in your pods and stay secured to your neural link for the most secure flight, yada yada. Trying not to think of how my sister had mocked me for even watching the video. You're such a germaphobe, I am sure you can make it one flight without washing your hands. It's only an hour-and-a-half flight, Nova, so she had drug my name out just to grate on my nerves. This bathroom is just between PRDRZ and PRDD. Only a sealed door and 20 feet separating me from my salvation. The neural link in my travel band is already buzzing frantically, trying to sync my pod. Another tremor, stronger this time. From the tiny crevice of a bathroom window, I catch a glimpse of PADEA silently detaching, its edges alight with blue-green fire as its gravitational field adjusts to the atmosphere around it. Beautiful, yet terrifying. 2 minutes until quantum separation. The second automated announcement sounds over the intercom. 2 minutes. Think. 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 There has to be a way out of here. My fingers trace the door's edge, feeling for there. A manual release panel, disguised as a part of the trim. The kind of backup system engineers include, but never expect anyone to actually use. I dig my nails into the seam and pull. The panel snaps off with a crack that sends me stumbling backwards. Behind the handle is a simple mechanical lever, a startling piece of analog technology for this quantum aeroline. I pull it down, instinctually throwing my body against the door. It bursts open with a pneumatic gasp, nearly sending me sprawling onto the floor. When my feet hit the smart polymer floor, I send up a silent prayer of thanks. The material has already started transforming, preparing for atmospheric re-entry, its texture shifting from a sleek, aesthetic design feature to a practical, high-traction surface designed for an emergency. In the distance, I hear the hydraulic hiss of PRD beginning its separation from the mainframe. That's when I see it. My salvation. Pansa C. I press my neural link band against PUDC's access panel, desperately hoping it will override the security protocols. Each buzz from the band feels like a rock dropping in my stomach. It rejects me once, twice. The authentication failures flashing across the display screen in angry red letters. 1 minute until quantum separation. 1 minute until quantum separation. The automated announcement taunts me over and over again. Panicking, I run my fingers over the screen, looking for anything to try. When in doubt, restart right? The thought flits through my mind. I use my fingers to pry open the panel cover, revealing a simple, glowing red button. Such an archaic solution, hiding in plain sight. A physical reset in a world of AI and neural commands. Slamming my hand against it, I pray to whatever gods might be listening that the oldest trick in the tech world will work one more time. 30 seconds until quantum separation. The announcement washes over me like a bucket of ice water. The walls of PODC begin to vibrate as the clamps begin to initiate their release sequence. The panel flickers from red to amber. The reset seems to have done something, not a full access grant, but a system reboot that might give me enough time. Emergency reset detected. System reinitialization in progress. The words flash across the access panel. I run. The door to PRD slides halfway open, then freezes, caught between evacuation and reboot protocols, forcing my body through the gap, ignoring the sharp parts of the doorframe, cutting into my clothes and skin, willing my body to get as small as possible. The system blares warnings through the pod speakers. Unauthorized entry detected. Security breach in PODC. Inside, the other passengers stare at me with a mixture of shock and confusion. The woman they had written off as collateral damage amongst the wreckage of this impending crash, defying both protocol and probability. The flight attendant assigned to our POD makes to move towards me, then hesitates as another announcement cuts through the chaos. 10 seconds until quantum separation, I dive into my seat. The neural interface recognizes my presence as soon as my hand hits the armrest. The familiar tingle of the neural link washes over me as the pod's systems integrate my biometrics into their separation calculations. For a moment, I think I can feel the algorithms adjusting, compensating for my return. My body sags with relief as my harness straps me into the pod. Did I damn us all with my return? Lost hope. January 20th, 2025. Entry 1. It all happened so fast. All I could grab was my journal and a few pens. Alarms began blaring, and Dad rushed me. Mom and David down into a bunker? I don't know when we got a bunker or why, but it was deep under our house. It's spooky down here. One light source in the center of the room. Only 2 mattresses. And the rest of the space is full of wugatans and jugs of water. I'm not sure how long we're going to be down here, so I figured journaling would be fun, though no one's answering my questions. Dad looks more serious than usual. He's been checking his pocket watch since we got here. Mom hasn't stopped pacing around, and David the deadbeat sat right on a mattress when we got down here. I don't want to be the only kid down here, so hopefully it only lasts a few days. January 23rd, 2025. Entry 2. The alarms and sirens from above finally stopped today. They made it hard to sleep, but it wasn't like it was easy to sleep in the first place. The beds were made for a kid half my size, and me and Mom had to share, so it was cramped. I still don't know why we are down here, but it's looking like it's going to be a little longer than a few days. It smells down here. The hole we potty in is deep, but the smell still sneaks up and fills the room with stench. And I'm not a fan of the food. I preferred the terrible food we got from the middle school. Then these cans. I wonder what my friends are doing. I miss them. January 28th, 2025. Entry 3. I hear people above. They sound sick and like they need help. Bangs and booms, groaning and wheezing. These sounds echoing through the bunker. But Dad says we can't help them. But if they're outside, why are we trapped in here? Also, David keeps looking at me funny. I don't like it. It ruins our card games. February 1st, 2025. Entry 4. I would have been such a great weather girl. I was always jealous Of the ladies on TV, they were so pretty. But I can always guess the weather in the bunker. A high chance of inhaling bodily fumes, followed by boredom for the entire day. Stay safe, folks. It looks like this has no mention of ending anytime soon. No time soon. February 3rd, 2025. Entry 5. I got curious. This bunker didn't just appear. Dad must have built it. And that means he knew something. Knew this was coming. Why didn't he warn us? He has a small leather journal. Keeps it tucked inside his blazer pocket. I know I shouldn't, but I need to see what's inside. February 7th, 2025. Entry 6. I started bleeding. I didn't know what to do. I just kept crying and crying. My mom was trying to comfort and explain what was happening, but I thought I was dying. It didn't help that David kept looking at the stain on my pants. I was so embarrassed. I hate him. I hate having to be around him, and he won't stop looking at me. I wish I could just vanish. February 8th, 2025. Entry 7. I stayed up while everyone was sleeping. Dad doesn't sleep with his blazer on, so I was able to grab the journal and look through it. None of it made sense, though. There were just symbols scribbled all through the journal, but I've seen him writing in it. Why draw these symbols? What does it mean? I also think David caught me snooping, because when I walked over to his and Dad's bed, he was shifting around. If he tells, I don't know what Dad will do. February 10th, 2025. Entry 8. David never said anything about the journal, so I think I'm in the clear. I'm becoming direly bored. David sits on his bed all day. Mom keeps replaying solitaire, and Dad is just checking his watch and journaling. No conversation is killing me. There's nothing new, no fresh air, and I never know if it's nighttime or not. If this is survival, is it even worth it? February 10th, 2025. Entry 9. I climbed to the top of the ladder to see if I could hear anything. I almost fell down because the ladder was old and the bars shifted. That fall could have been really bad. Most of the noises from above had stopped, and so it's just been silence. But when I pressed my ear to the hatch, I could feel vibrations, almost like a buzzing, like a wasp. There's still a world out there, I think. February 12th, 2025. Entry 9. I asked Dad about the buzzing, since now it's loud enough to be slightly heard from in the bunker. He, of course, didn't answer me, but he looked concerned by me asking. I couldn't take it. He had just stared at the hatch and then gave me his pocket watch. February. So much has happened. I lost my pens, so I couldn't write anything. It all feels so frozen. Nothing is moving anymore. Nothing's the same. My mind has run out of thoughts. The noises above are muffled. The only thing I feel is my heart bumping in my chest. Dad stopped checking his watch. He no longer writes anymore. I miss showering. My body is so dirty, even though I scrub so much. No matter how hard I try, the dirt won't come off. I catch my dad looking at the ceiling every day now. He's probably thinking what we both have been thinking this entire time. Is it safe to go up yet? He always looks scared whenever the thought crosses his mind. I can see it. His dread of what's to come. Why won't he tell me? Is it so terrible? Maybe I should find out for myself. It would be better than being in this casket. I'm tired of soup. I'm so tired. I want him to hug me. I want a hug so bad. It's been so long since I've been hugged. But I can't. I can't accept his comfort. It's hurting him to know he can't help me. A hug from Mom would've. She gave the best hugs. The buzzings never stopped before. So many continuous days with that buzzing in my ear. It's finally gone. Something changed. I have to take this chance. Dad would try to stop me if he knew. I have to do it now while he's asleep. I know you're reading this now, Dad. I love you. I wasn't strong enough. Forgive me. The temporal drift. I could still feel the biting pressure of the zip ties on my wrists. The echoes of my parents' screams ringing in my ears. Time travel was my lock and key, a temporary solace from the agony of my past. But now, it felt like something more, a last-ditch effort to preserve my soul, to outrun the ghosts of my mistakes. I had never imagined that a time travel discovery, once a triumph, would come to haunt me. But there it was. George Walsh had entered my life under the guise of advancing my discovery, only to destroy the very essence of my work. Our captors, a part of international security for global government, wanted nothing more than to exploit my discovery for their own gain. Revenge was the one thing I craved. The one thing that consumed me completely. It was an equation, a system of cause and effect I could almost predict. George Walsh had taken everything from me. My parents, murdered my work, destroyed my life in fragments of emotional turmoil. He deserved to vanish from existence. And in the stillness of my heart, I felt more certain that I could make that happen and get away with it. But I was no longer the same person I had been months ago. I was someone different, someone capable of far darker things than I had ever realized. And that terrified me. I felt weight of the pocket watch in my hand, like a leaden anchor, pulling me deeper into the darkness. Memories of my parents' screams echoed faintly in my mind. But I knew that if I let them take control, they would destroy me. The time travel device had given me power, yes, but power was a dangerous thing. As a physicist, I understood the delicate balance of energy and entropy. I knew that any small disturbance could lead to catastrophic consequences. reality itself bending and breaking in ways I could not control. Emotions were overpowering my logic. Revenge was tempting, seductive even. It was a persistent force, creeping into my thoughts, pulling me back into the past, into the moments of pain and loss. It was intoxicating. I could almost taste it, feel it running through my veins. If I allowed it to consume me, I'd be no better than the very people I sought to destroy. I was at war with myself, my mind telling me to focus, to fight the urge for violence, but my body trembling with the desire to strike. My nails dug into my palms, a small anchor in the raging storm. I tried to breathe, to focus, but the thoughts were relentless. The mathematics of it all did not add up. I was trapped in a paradox of my own making. Every thought I had led to another, a series of equations that felt impossible to solve. Revenge would change everything, but I could not afford to lose control. If I did, I would make an irreversible mistake. Again, that would be truly brilliant, wouldn't it? Sleep offered no comfort, but a pattern emerged in the dreams that plagued me. They were not mine, not entirely. They were vivid, pulling me into a past that was not my own, into a time of great resistance and rebellion. The golden age of piracy, a period of defiance against oppressive forces, where violence and betrayal were everyday occurrences. I grasped onto that dream like a lifeline. Perhaps revenge was not my only option. Perhaps I could rewrite my own fate without destroying everything. However, the dark urge refused to be ignored. It whispered louder with every passing hour, its voice growing insistent and demanding. Revenge was cunning. It seeped into my bones, making it increasingly more difficult to think straight. It clawed at me, its claws like the jagged edges of a broken mirror. My hands convulsed. My heart raced. Every inch of me screamed for action. But I knew better. I was a scientist, after all. I understood systems, the way one small change could ripple outward and cause unintended consequences. Revenge was an unstable reaction. It would explode, and I would lose myself in the process. But I could not stop the storm inside of me. Time travel had never been attempted before. No one had ever successfully crossed the threshold between ages, and yet here I was, stuck in limbo, in a place where the boundaries of time blurred and twisted. I should have been focused, should have been calculating every detail of my destination, but instead, my mind was adrift. It was as if the chaos inside me had spilled into the very fabric of time itself, distorting my path. And then, just as the chaos threatened to take over, I felt it. a cold, icy hand of dissonance. It was me, or at least a version of me, that I no longer recognized. This version of me was lost in the darkness, a person forged by pain and revenge, someone I was terrified of becoming. It was as if my own fear gripped my heart, pulling me away from the edge of destruction. I closed my eyes, fighting for control. I couldn't think clearly. The rage was suffocating, like a fear that threatened to consume me whole. I tried to remember what I knew about systems. Could I control the chaos? I thought of thermodynamics, of entropy, and the second law, that everything tended toward disorder. Was this my own collapse? Was I simply a part of a greater, inevitable breakdown? I clutched the pocket watch, the mechanism cold against my skin. The ticking, once a comforting sound, now felt like the ticking of a bomb. Time was slipping away, but I had to make my choice. The past was a tangled mess, and if I tried to correct it, if I tried to rewrite it, I might undo everything I had worked for. But revenge was too tempting. It pressed against me, a living, breathing thing. I could not escape it. It was inside me. And yet, there was something else. Hope. Hope had always been so distant, something I hadn't allowed myself to believe in for so long. But in that moment, in that fractured, chaotic space, I grasped it with my fingertips. It was a lifeline, pulling me away from the precipice of vengeance. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to hold on to that warmth, a flicker of it, faint but undeniable. Could it really be there, in the darkest recesses of my mind? I closed my eyes, listening to my breath, steadying myself. The time travel device was my escape, but it could also serve to be my salvation. I didn't have to destroy everything to fix my mistakes. I could choose a different path, one that didn't lead to annihilation. The warm glow of hope began to spread from my fingertips, a tiny spark that grew with each breath I took. The darkness that had been clawing at me started to retreat, fading like a bad dream. The rage that had been consuming me felt distant now, as if it no longer had a hold on me. I focused on the past, on the golden age of piracy, a time where resistance thrived, not for vengeance, but for something greater, freedom. A different kind of rebellion. I felt the now familiar pull of time travel as the world around me warped. My body shuddered, the vertigo setting in, but I held on to the flicker of hope. I could escape the grip of revenge. I could escape my fate and choose something else. The darkness around me deepened, but this time I was not afraid. The weight of my decision was immense, but the warmth of hope anchored me. The past was waiting. But this time, I was not running toward destruction. I was running toward a new future. Jailbreak. The cold, sterile hallway just outside of my confinement center wall made it possible to hear every footstep, growing louder as they neared me, fading as the person receded into the distance, marching to whatever task they were assigned. It was impossible to know how long I'd been here. Minutes felt like days. Hours felt like months. All I knew was that it was time. What was that quote from The Shawshank Redemption? Get busy livin' or get busy dyin'. It was now or never. I'd spent the last several months learning the patterns and rhythms of this facility, and I'd discovered that it was possible to make an escape undetected. It was, however, highly improbable. The odds of being discovered were astronomically high, and the consequences ranged from merely being returned to captivity, or, well, one simply had to come to terms with the risk being worth the reward. My mind was made up. The door to my cell was never locked, interestingly enough. The reality was I could walk out at any time, but that didn't make me any less of a captive. They knew that I couldn't just leave, and that made them reckless with this one very simple security measure. There were others here, too, held in similar circumstances as myself. If my plan was to work, if I could make my way to freedom, there would be new protocols put in place. The others would feel those consequences. That thought had kept me from trying to escape before, that my freedom would lead to their pain. But as the days and months wore on, I'd shoved those thoughts aside. Surely they had tried and failed at exactly what I'm attempting now. Did they consider how their success would affect me? I strongly doubted it. It was every man for himself in here, despite the words I'd heard time and time again as the guards and wardens walked past my cage. Sunlight flooded through the one small window behind me. It seemed as though it had been weeks of gray skies. The warmth on my skin was all the encouragement that I needed. It was now or never. I listened for the sound of 2 sets of footsteps coming down the hallway. This pair always made their way along the corridor at the same time every day, always together. After them, there would be 2 more, but this time in singles, a few minutes apart. Then it would be time. They all needed to see me, to know I was still here. Their complacency must remain intact for my plan to succeed. The faint sound of 4 feet making their way towards me finally could be heard. The steps grew louder, keeping pace with the increasing pounding of my heart as I knew the time had come. Louder, louder, My pulse began to increase. I had to bring it down. This cannot be done if I can't control my nerves. I felt my hands begin to shake a little with the increased adrenaline. Sweat began to form ever so slightly beneath my arms. I had to get control. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Then another. Then another. I cleared my mind of what was about to take place. I didn't need to go over the plan any further. I knew it well. I just needed to move with calm deliberation. Another deep breath. I felt my heart rate begin to slow. Another deep breath. My hands steadied. Then the plodding footsteps came to a stop just beyond my door. "Hello in there," came the much too delighted voice of the middling drone on patrol. He was happy to be here, happy to be in the slightest position of power over me. Had a few things gone differently, maybe it would be me out there and him in here. I like to think that I'm better than him, though. I'd help with someone's escape plan if I was alerted to it, not ratted out. Or, at the very least, I'd look the other way, but not him. No, he derives meaning from this tiny amount of authority. I won't give him the satisfaction of getting even a hint of what I'm about to do. "Hello, sir," I reply back, attempting to soften the terseness that I want to convey. The woman who patrols with him never acknowledges me. I can tell she believes he should be more dismissive of me, that he should use whatever mediocre power he has to diminish my existence even further. Nice to see the sun shining again, isn't it? It is. Hopefully, you'll get to enjoy it fully soon. I know I will. I continued to myself. Perhaps, but my shift does run pretty late into the day, so maybe another time. The woman sighed with impatience. Well, I should carry on. See you on the next pass. Yes, on the next pass. Good day, sir. Their footsteps fade into the cavernous recesses of the facility to my right as I await the next set of footsteps. The waiting seemed to be the worst part of my plan so far. It gave my heart too much time to become anxious, so I tried to occupy my mind with thoughts of how the woman would berate the man if my actions were ever discovered, particularly if it became known that mere minutes after they'd passed, I'd made my move. A smile drifted across my face at the thought of it. She clearly had some type of authority over him, but I knew for certain it wasn't in rank. Perhaps it was in that same way that many women had authority over many men throughout all of time. The issues that my leaving will cause him, the erosion of his pathetic authority, brought a great joy to me that steeled my nerves for my next encounter. I heard the clicking of heels echoing in my ears, and I braced myself for another interrogation. This time, however, there was only a slight pause, and then hurried footsteps away down the hall. I heard a slight commotion and some raised voices. an uncommon occurrence that I hoped would resolve itself quickly. I strained to listen, to determine if this new development would derail my escape before it had even truly begun. It's not what you think. Please? I just needed... You needed what? It was the man who had just stopped and spoke to me. He must have backtracked and surprised the poor guy, who clearly had the same thoughts of freedom as me. Why did he choose to go now? The timing was way off for any chance of success. Pathetic fool. I cursed him under my breath, because now they'd be on high alert, if they weren't already. Back in your cell. You don't come out until we say you can come out. I thought that was clear, but please, tell me if I need to make it more so. Do you want me to do that? No, sir. That won't be necessary. I'll have to report this, you know? You brought this on yourself. Perhaps the officers will have mercy. But it's really out of my hands. The silence that followed must have been the poor soul's sad acceptance of his fate. Finally, I heard everyone continue on their way, and I listened for the steps that would signal the beginning of my mission. I said a quick prayer that my outcome would not be the same as the one I'd just witnessed while the third patrol made its way to me. "Hello in there," came the petite voice of a woman nearing 60 years old. If she was a day, she really couldn't prevent anyone from leaving on her own. But that was just as true of the others who passed by here. Their abilities relied completely on their willingness to report to those who could act. Dodging detection by these tattletales was the only path to a successful jailbreak. "Hello, ma'am," I replied back, hoping I concealed my utter disdain. Calling me ma'am is unnecessary, but even more, it is unwanted. You make me feel old. My apologies. Nice to see the sun out again, isn't it? She examined me as she asked the question. It was not small talk. She was searching me. Yes, it is. It's been a while. Hopefully, you'll get out to enjoy it. My heart rate began to rise slightly as I replied. Her eyes pierced into mine as I took slow, deliberate breaths to calm myself. I can't imagine I appeared nonchalant, but hopefully, at the very least, I wasn't giving away my intentions. Well, I have a long day here, so it's hard to say, she said at last. My heart beat began to return to normal. See you on the next pass. Yes, on the next pass. Good day, Ma. I caught myself before the word fully formed. Good day, miss. She smiled at that, turned, and began to slowly walk toward my right, just as the others had. When I heard her steps turn the far corner and vanish, it was time for me to go. I stepped out slowly, looking both ways. The coast was clear, so I hurried to my left, careful not to break into a run, as the sound of my steps might give me away to someone I couldn't see. Around the corner to my right, there was a large desk and 2 chairs. I had discovered that this desk was only occupied 2 days a week. Today was not one of them, so I slipped behind it and waited. Now my heart was racing, but that was of no concern. If I was seen at this point, it was all over anyway. I only needed my nerves to stay intact enough to remember my plan. And if I'm being honest, the adrenaline would help my focus. This next part was crucial. I peeked under the desk and waited. Soon 8 sets of shoes appeared from the direction I needed to go. They would pass this desk and then break off in 2 separate directions, as they always did. I had never seen them, but I could hear them from my cell. If they saw me behind this desk, I was done for. It was the biggest risk to my plan that I was aware of. But they always seemed so engaged in chatting with each other that I felt like it was a risk worth taking. I tried making myself as small as I could and steadied my breathing. One glance in the wrong direction by any of these 8 sets of eyes could cost me everything. I closed my eyes and just listened. It sounded just like it always had. This group was all men. They were young and constantly spoke over each other, trying to one-up the last story, get a bigger laugh, be a bigger idiot. But their youth didn't make them any less dangerous. In fact, it was probably the opposite. They had more to gain by exposing someone like me trying to escape. Thankfully, they seemed to be their normal, obnoxious selves today. They loudly caravanned past me, but then they stopped abruptly. That wasn't normal. Did you hear that? One of them asked no one in particular. The group continued to jabber on. Wait. Shh, he said more forcefully. Panic began to form in my chest. I tried to make myself even smaller and more invisible underneath the desk as I held my breath, desperately trying not to make even a whisper. When the whole group was fully compliant in listening intently, the questioner let out the longest, loudest, most foul flatulence directly at my hiding place. He erupted in laughter as the rest of the group had mixed reactions of laughter or complete disgust, while I did my absolute best to not give myself away. A cough building in my chest as my eyes began to water. At last, the group moved on, splitting into 2 groups of morons, as was the usual course of action. When the sound of both had sufficiently faded, I collapsed onto the floor and allowed myself the smallest of coughs to clear my lungs before peeking out to be certain I was alone. The next doorway I needed was down the hall, where the dangerous imbeciles had come from. Once I went through those doors, I was in foreign territory. I had no idea what the comings and goings would be like, so I'd have to maintain strict diligence of focus. Certain that no one could see me, I crept from my safe zone and stayed low and against the wall, heading to the next door. I put my ear against it and listened. Silence. I cracked it open and slowly entered the next room. To my left was a bank of elevators. To my right, a restroom. But the hallway was empty. I stepped into the open and was deciding on whether an elevator or the stairwell was riskier when I heard voices approaching the door at the far end. Without a thought, I leapt to my right and into the restroom. I pushed a stall door open, closed it quickly behind me, turned the lock, and climbed onto the toilet, using my hands to balance against the walls of the stall, formulating a plan of what to do in the event that the group followed me into the restroom became unnecessary, as I heard them pause outside of the door and briefly chat before moving away. I wasn't sure where they had gone, or even if all of them had left. But I had to keep moving. I had no choice. I slipped out of the stall and poked my head out of the restroom. The hallway was once again empty. I decided to take the elevator down. There was an equal chance of an encounter with someone either way, but at least the elevator was faster. I needed luck for this to succeed, at this point anyway, so I pushed the button. The cables and gears of the elevator working sounded as though they were beckoning the whole building to take notice of the fugitive awaiting the doors to open. It felt like days passed, but finally, the elevator arrived. I was prepared to flee to my restroom of refuge if someone was in the car. But fate shined on me and I stepped inside and pushed the fear of having nowhere to run deep inside as the doors closed in front of me. I had to get down 4 floors. If I could do that, I would be able to taste freedom. To this point, my vanishing act seemed to have gone unnoticed. I heard no alarms. No one seemed to be chasing me. The doors opened on the ground floor, and I stepped tentatively out, checking both directions. The lobby that the lift exited to was empty, aside from a few chairs and one low table. There was one guard station I had to get past, and then I simply needed to keep moving, far away from this place. The guard's head was down, distracted by whatever was keeping him glued to his phone. He didn't know me. I could simply walk past him, but even that seemed like a risk. It was not the time to get sloppy. Hugging the wall, I walked closer to the officer until I felt I had no choice but to crouch down. I still needed to move quickly in case anyone from the 4th floor found their way down here. But I'd have to do it from the ground. I laid flat and began to army crawl along the edge of the guard station's massive marble desk. When I'd reached the other side, I edged close to the wall again and inched my way to a standing position and began to walk. "Sir! Hey! Mister! Hey!" Panic. The guard must have finished his TV show at the worst possible time. I glanced back to see him getting out of his seat and coming my way. "Sir, you have to come back. Sir, you can't leave." Bet. I erupted into a sprint down the long hallway, with windows on both sides. If anyone from the 4th floor could see me, it was all over. You have to sign out. You can't just leave. Sign out? No way. The guard was gaining on me. He was fast, not like one of those lazy guards you'd see on TV who'd rather eat a donut than do a push-up. He was going to catch me before I could get off the grounds. It was over. I blasted through the door to the outside world and took the steps down 3 at a time. I heard the guard right behind me, closing in fast, just as a car pulled up and screeched to a stop. The door flung open. Get in. I didn't stop to think. I jumped in and was closing the door as the car began to speed away. I glanced back to see the guard cursing and throwing his hands in the air before I turned to the driver. Perfect timing, I grinned. I wasn't sure if you could make it. You have your clubs? Matt's got 'em. He said he'd meet us there. So your boss let you go? Ha! No? But it's fine. No one knows I left. And by the time they find out, it won't raise any suspicions. No way I was missing the first round of spring. I knew it! I told them you'd make it. You just won me $20. Glad I could help you out. Buy me a beer at the turn. Now step on it. I want to putt a few before we have to tee off. In our blood, can expect heavy thunderstorms from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Chris's radio buzzed as he trundled down the exit to the rest stop. Windshield wipers working overtime as the rain and wind pelted his semi. He would have to wait out the storm, lest he risk ending up in a ditch. All the better for me, he thought to himself as he pulled up to the truck stop. I can finally look for someone to play with. Chris had been a trucker for years, enjoying the solitude of the road and the freedoms it granted him. Were he to succeed at his goals, he would need space and quiet. His roots offered him just that. Nobody had caught on to him yet, though the news was always warning potential victims away from hitchhiking. He was a legend along I-80, killing travelers and truckers alike. He climbed out of his truck, hurrying inside the rest stop as the rain poured. The place was completely dead. Chris sighed, cursing his bad luck. First the storm, and now nobody around to play with? He was going to have to keep moving, wasn't he? His fingers itched to grasp a life by the throat, to tear it apart piece by piece until there was nothing left but red. It had been too long since he had had free rein. He thought back to his last hunt. He had snuffed out a college kid whose car had broken down on the side of the road. Some freckle-faced loser whose name he didn't even remember. That kid had put up a good fight, but he was no match for Chris. None of them were. He grinned to himself. He would find someone to play with soon enough. The sound of the rest stop doors banging open startled him, and he turned to find 2 sopping wet figures shaking themselves dry in the entryway. They looked young and weak, Chris noted, with a wolfish grin. Perfect. What are you boys doing out here all alone? Chris called out, watching his prey with barely concealed bloodlust. The young men eyed him warily. One of them stepped forward, standing between Chris and his friend. It's not safe out there in the rain. Our car broke down, the young man said quietly, voice meek and small. We need a ride. Can you help us, mister? Chris couldn't believe his luck. Where are you two headed? Chicago. Chris grinned, extending a weathered hand for the boy to take. We'll head out when the rain has let up a bit then, he said, introducing himself. My name is Chris. What do I call you two? I'm Matthew, the boy who shook his hand said. And I'm Sam, the other said warily. They were perfect for Chris in every way, soft and unassuming. Well, Matthew, Sam, do you two need something to eat? I can get you something at the vending machines. No thanks. Matthew shook his head. He would be a difficult one, wouldn't he? We're okay. The trio sat in awkward silence for about a half an hour, waiting for the rain to let up. Chris fidgeted where he sat, watching the two young men, impatient. He supposed he didn't have to wait for the rain to let up completely. Wanna head out? He asked, standing. I don't think waiting around here is gonna do us much good. The rain is supposed to continue almost all night. All fine by me, Matthew sighed, helping Sam to his feet. After you, mister. Chris led them through the pouring rain and towards his truck, helping them up into the cabin. Thunder boomed overhead, a sinister soundtrack for what was about to come. Chris got Matthew and Sam situated and then pulled out of the rest stop, heart soaring with anticipation. So what's in Chicago? Chris asked, looking over at Matthew. Family? Friends? A new start, Matthew said quietly, expression tense. I don't want to talk about it. Perfect, Chris thought. They're runaways. Fair enough. I won't make you talk if you don't want to. Where are you headed? Sam asked. The first thing he had said the entire time he was in Chris's truck. Are you going to Chicago too? Nah, Chris dismissed. I'm headed for the East Coast. Raleigh. Not anymore, Chris gasped, as Matthew reached across the center console, wrestling the steering wheel out of his grip and sending them veering off the road. Chris swore as his trailer swung off of the road, rending metal screeching as sheets of rain cascaded down upon them. What the hell was this kid's problem? Rage built in Chris's chest as the semi came to a shuddering halt, firmly lodged in the drainage ditch. You're ours now, Matthew hissed, as he stuck Chris in the neck with something sharp and stinging. He could feel the fight leave his body as Matthew and Sam dragged him out of the truck and into the ditch. What were these kids? Chris struggled against his captors, but whatever they had drugged him with was making it hard to coordinate his limbs. He was so tired. Sammy, Matthew hummed as he brushed Chris's rain-matted hair off of his forehead. He can be yours. Happy birthday. Sam grinned wildly, the flicker of light against a blade catching Chris's eye as he lay paralyzed in the mud and grass. These kids were like him, he realized. He had fallen victim to his own game. He coughed weakly as Sam's knife ghosted across his skin, stinging icy cold. He was completely at the mercy of those he was sure would have been his victims. You thought you could kill us, Matthew mused, gaze cold and calculating. Lightning split the sky with a resounding crack. We're not scared of the likes of you. Now, we get to have our fun. The wind screamed in Chris's stead as his captors took him apart. Oh, the irony of it all. Here he was, reduced to a mere plaything in the heart of the storm. He never should have stopped at that rest stop. Only once his frantic heartbeat had fizzled out did the fear finally leave him. He stared unseeingly into the pouring rain as the sky mourned his loss. Matthew and Sam disappeared into the night, not a trace left behind. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has issued a warning to travelers along I-80. Chris's radio buzzed as the semi lay abandoned in the ditch. Serial killings along the highway threaten lone truckers. Do not stop for hitchhikers and report anything suspicious to local authorities. The painted door. For what feels like an eternity, I stare at the bloodied body without being able to move. It's sprawled at my feet, limbs flung wide open, limp, each arm and leg pointing in a different direction on the filthy cobblestone ground of the tiny, walled, dark, and abandoned courtyard. Above us, the moonlight and the sparks of stars flicker behind white clouds that slice through a deep blue sky, like ghost ships crossing distant, uncharted seas. The layers of mythical creatures and fearsome leviathans. With my free hand, I grope blindly at my own stomach, applying pressure to the wounds, the deep cuts that tore through flesh and muscles during the fight. Warm, dark blood gushes between my fingers, trickling down my arm, soaking the inner sleeve of my shirt and jacket. A lantern shines through the fogged glass of a third-floor window in the adjacent building. I run and hide, crouching behind a bush. Clenching my teeth, I stifle a groan. "Who's there?" demands the gruff, weathered voice of an old man. Through the tangle of leaves, cloaked in shadows, I watch him. He wears a long, white cotton nightgown and a matching cap. One hand holds the open window, while the other grips the lit lantern. He squints and scans the courtyard, fixing his gaze on the body. Hey, you degenerate drunkard. Go die somewhere else, Satan. Shoo, shoo. He yells like this for a minute or two, then grunts, mutters a curse, shuts the window, and disappears along with the light inside the room. I lift my head and look around, peering through one of the gaps in the ancient stone wall into the street. Seeing no one, I seize the opportunity to leave the scene. I rise, pull myself over the wall, and slip into the narrow, winding cobblestone streets. I try to move quickly, but quietly. I fail at both. The wound slows me down, saps my strength, the precision of my movements, and wherever I pass, I catch the attention of horses tied to posts or hitched to carriages, and dogs guarding gardens and courtyards. The former neigh and snort, the latter bark, bare their teeth, and growl behind fences, stone walls, or the iron bars of gates. The streets are deserted, except for the animals, silent save for their sounds, the gusts of wind, the rustling of leaves, the creak of hinges on lonely shop, and tavern signs swaying in the dim light. Of the lanterns hanging from sparsely spaced posts along the paths, only a few remain lit. I regret coming on foot, but at the same time, I know I had no choice. I couldn't risk having the coachman as a witness, and driving my own carriage alone would have raised too many suspicions. A rider draws far more attention than a man on foot. A man can move unnoticed, can hide at the first sign of danger, can leap over walls and slip through courtyards unseen, can climb walls and travel across rooftops. After a while, I stop feeling my legs, stop perceiving their movement. Despite my thick, fine clothes, I feel a terrible cold creeping up my spine, stabbing beneath my ribs, filling my chest and guts with dread. I collapse on my knees beside a wall and sit with my back against it in a dark alley, sheltered by shadows, trash, and foul smells. Just a minute, I think. I only need a minute if I allow myself 1 or 100. I can't say. But I wake startled when the clamor of sirens and bells reaches my ears. I've been discovered. They're after me. I bury the fingers of my free hand in the crevices of the wall, between the stones, and pull myself back onto my feet. I resume dragging myself forward, attempting to run. I stagger in zigzags, stumble and nearly fall, collide with posts, carriages, empty stakes, and walls, yet press on, one street at a time and one turn at a time, choosing the most crooked and darkest paths, cutting through back alleys, narrow lanes, and forgotten open courtyards. The dreadful symphony of the pursuit never seems far, but also doesn't gain on me as much as I fear. It follows me closely, always keeping the same distance, as if it were holding back for now. It is a macabre, inhuman sound, seemingly coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. I am about to turn a corner when I see the light, unlike any other I have ever encountered. It is not yellow or orange like the light of fire or lanterns. It is white, pulsating, alive, like sunlight itself. I stop, leaning against the wall of a building, mesmerized. The light crawls over the cobblestones like a living thing, formless and boundless. As it approaches, the colors of the lanterns, the animals, the stones, the ground, the walls, everything it is about to touch, fade away. It is as if the light is absorbing these colors, transforming objects into pencil sketches on white paper, like the ones I make before transferring my drawings in color to the canvases that I exchange for prestige, privilege, and fortune. Then the light swallows them, sucks up the colorless drafts as well, consumes them as if it were an immense, infinite mouth. The mouth of God, reclaiming into cosmic oblivion the living and the dead of this world. Behind the blinding curtain, the world disappears, ceasing to exist in a way that defies both physics and human intellect. Slowly, the light moves forward, a white void, smooth and shapeless, transforming what once was into nothingness. It is at that moment that the bells and sirens grow louder and closer, unbearably near. I look around and then start running again. I cross the intersection, with the light devouring the finite world to my right, and follow the street perpendicular to its advance. In a desperate attempt to lose my pursuers, I turn corners at random, sometimes left, sometimes right, zigzagging northward. My twists and turns are not always aimless. At times, I am forced to turn here and there, or backtrack when the wall of light appears just a few steps ahead of me, burning my eyes and rushing to envelop me. I shield my face behind my free hand and dive into the first available path to the right or left, or pivot on my heels and retrace my steps to the previous crossroads. Thus, I conquer the paved streets and the dirt roads, crossing the mile-long stretch that separates the town from my private hill and the mansion crowning it. I pass through the garden gates and rush to the front door. The guards and other staff still awake at this hour are startled, surrounding me, offering to help me walk, to carry me to a bed, a chair. They inquire about my injury, whether they should send a rider to fetch the physician from the village. I command them all to step back, to leave me alone, ordering that every door and window be sealed. For a brief moment, I work alongside them in this endeavor, but then I turn and make my way down the corridors to the bedroom. I kneel by the side of the massive canopy bed, and touch Maria's warm face as she sleeps in peace and oblivion, undisturbed by the banging of doors, the shouted exchange of orders, or the music threatening to unravel my perfect world. The clamor of that million-strong chorus of sirens and bells. Gently, I wake her and help her to her feet. Quickly, my love, come with me. You must come with me, I whisper urgently, pulling her by the hand. She follows, trembling, crying, asking about all that blood, about the injuries, and the blood, the blood, the blood. So it was all over, then. Had I won? Were we finally free to live our love, no longer bound by escapes, lies, persecutions, or consequences? I pull her by the hand through the corridors to my studio. Along the way, I grab one of the lanterns hanging from rings fixed to the stone walls. I enter, pull her inside, and lock the door behind us. Frantically, I fly from one side of the room to the other, ensuring all other entrances and windows are shut as well. I move unsteadily, stumbling, pushing aside finished paintings, knocking over empty easels, unfinished canvases, and tables cluttered with papers, palettes, jars of paint, and brushes. Once convinced that every possible entry is sealed, I return to Maria, grasping her hand again, and lead her toward one of the walls. I scour the floor for a brush and a jar of paint. When I open the first jar, I find inside a solid, useless, gray lump. I hurry around the room, gathering more jars, only to find them equally futile. I try using the paint from the palettes, attempting to make it at least pliable with saliva. But to no avail, I find myself clutching a dry, useless brush, turning helplessly in place, sobbing, groaning in pain. Then I remember the wound, the blood. I return to the wall, grip trembling, inconsolable and bewildered Maria's hand. Dip the brush into my own wound, pulling it out with bristles drenched in blood, dripping red. Together, we approach the wall, and I begin to work. The bells and sirens grow ever closer, unbearably close, now just outside the corridor, sounding in neighboring rooms. With desperate and vigorous strokes, I paint a doorknob, our only escape route. In my mind, I paint on the other side the perfect world, the perfect life, the happy ending we deserve. I squeeze Maria's hand a little tighter. I let the brush slip from my sticky, blood-soaked fingers, falling with a muffled thud beneath the cacophony of sirens and bells. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. With my free hand, I reach toward the doorknob and grasp. Nothing. No, this can't be. I open my eyes and try again, this time keeping them wide open. Around us, The bells and sirens engulf the world, drowning out every other sound and voice. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. I look around, over my shoulder. From every corner of the studio, through the cracks in the windows and doors, the white, deadly light, that devouring force, seeps into the room. It stretches through gaps between boards and under the passages, swallowing colors, easels, brushes, canvases, and loose sheets of paper. I turn to Maria for one last embrace, but there is no time to know if the movement is completed or if the light is faster, extinguishing us before our farewell can come to fruition. I wake up with my head pounding, the bells and sirens exploding within my temples, and then the music begins to make sense. It sounds familiar, and I realize it is not composed of actual bells or sirens. Blindly, I stretch my arm to the side, fumbling for my phone on the nightstand, and turn off the alarm. I squint at the blinding white light of the sun streaming through the window of my small room, at the foot of my bed. Instinctively, still shrouded in the fog of dreams, I touch my stomach, searching for wounds, only to find it unscathed. Afterward, I get up, wait for the occupant of room 23 to finish their shower, take mine, get dressed, fill my travel mug with coffee in the kitchen on the ground floor of the pension, and rush to the bus stop a block away. Exactly at 7:45 a.m., I knock on the side door of the cafe where I work, located in the food court on the second floor of the Central Mall. William, the grumpy and bald manager, lets me in with a scowl and a grunt. I promptly put on my apron over my uniform, wear my cap, and take up my position. By 8:00 a.m., we are open and running full steam. At 8:17 a.m., Maria arrives. My sweet, small, slender, blonde, and gentle Maria with blue eyes. It's Thursday, and as usual, she is accompanied by her husband. He looks different in 21st century clothes, free of blood, with both eyes intact and without fatal gashes across his neck. They hold hands as they stand in line. At 8:22 a.m., they are in front of me, smiling and politely placing their order while they speak and smile, and I absent-mindedly jot down their requests. I see through the space between their bodies and heads, across the food court, into the art studio on the other side. At once, even from that distance, my eyes find the painting that captivated me 3 days ago, among the dozens of canvases and easels displayed in the windows. A couple holding hands before a door painted on a wall. The man, clearly a celebrated artist from the 18th or 19th century, still clutching a brush wet with paint. And the door. That door. That door. And that freedom. and that door, and suddenly they could go anywhere they wanted to, could love each other and be happy wherever they pleased, as much as their hearts desired, in any place they chose, and nothing else could follow them. Not through that door. Nothing beyond them would be able to cross it. Certainly, nothing bad or evil. I finish jotting down their order. We exchange pleasantries, and the couple turns their back on me. Maria turns her back on me, taking a seat at one of the tables with her husband. The two share a brief kiss, a tender smile. Clearing my throat, I call out in a loud and steady voice, "Next!" And the line moves, and life goes on around here. Do not step on the blue. Obsessions are insidious. They take root in the mind like a silent poison, creeping into every thought and distorting our perception of reality. They tug at us like an unseen current, pulling us away from the shore of reason, dragging us into dark waters where escape becomes a distant memory. Slowly, they drive us toward reckless decisions, choices that harm not only ourselves, but ripple outward, touching everyone we care about. Norman Sykes walked the coastal road, the sea stretching endlessly beside him. The soft murmur of the waves was a lullaby, hypnotic and soothing. As he passed a weathered sign, something stopped him. He took a few steps back, brushed a stray lock of hair from his eyes, and read it again. "Do not step on the blue." That's odd. It usually says, "Do not step on the grass," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. His gaze wandered instinctively toward the sea. Countless tangerine peels floated aimlessly on the surface, moving in lazy, slow circles. His breath caught. Then he woke with a jolt, his heart thudding violently in his chest. The same dream. Again, at 50, Norman had spent much of his life trapped in the clutches of obsession. He twisted door locks over and over, checking them again and again until certainty, that cruel illusion of control, settled in. There were mornings when he turned back mid-commute to ensure he hadn't left something behind, arriving late to work, to appointments, perpetually out of sync. But none of his compulsions held the weight of this fixation that had sprouted from a dream. It wasn't fear, it wasn't terror, but for reasons beyond his grasp. It consumed him. Without thinking, he began avoiding anything blue. His favorite navy suit, long tucked in the back of the closet, was now hidden away. The blue blankets he once loved were packed into storage. He even took down paintings that had a hint of blue, as if erasing the color would free him. But the dream did not relent. One evening, as he mentally catalogued every trace of blue still clinging to his life, his eyes fell on his reflection. And there they were, his deep, piercing blue eyes staring back at him. Once they had drawn people in, captivated them. Now, they repulsed him. A few hours later, Norman walked out of the ophthalmologist's office, his new black contact lenses hiding his gaze. He then bought a pair of brown-tinted sunglasses to dull the sky's unrelenting blue. It helped. A little. Blue was fading from his waking world, but it still haunted his dreams. The nightmares continued, night after night. One day, exhaustion took hold of him. His legs trembled under the weight of sleepless nights. He found a bench at the edge of a park, collapsed onto it, and checked the time on his phone. He should have been at work hours ago. His eyes were sore, aching from lack of rest, from the black contact lenses that felt like foreign objects against his eyes, pressing into his very soul. He hadn't taken them out in days, and the constant pain was a reminder of the obsession that had consumed him. He had always believed control was the answer. If he could just manage his thoughts, his actions, he could maintain order. The faint echoes of his dream lingered. The blue, the tangerines, the sea. Strange, but familiar, all-consuming. He walked on, each step heavier than the last. Shops, people, the noise of the city, it all passed him by. He was lost, trapped inside his own thoughts, unable to escape. At a street corner, he saw a vendor with a cart piled high with tangerines. His chest tightened. The sight of them made his skin crawl. He couldn't breathe. Without thinking, he rushed forward, his foot swinging violently to kick the cart over. The tangerines spilled everywhere, rolling onto the street. He heard the vendor shout in anger, but Norman didn't care. He had to escape. Days bled into nights, and still he refused to sleep. It was the only way to avoid the chaos in his head. Then one morning, as he drove to work, exhaustion gnawed at him. His eyes burned, both from lack of sleep and the contact lenses that hadn't been removed in days. The pain was unbearable. He stopped at a red light, gripping the wheel, rubbing his aching eyes. Behind him, impatient horns blared. He assumed the light had turned green. Half blind, he pressed the gas pedal. His foot felt heavy, disconnected, as if it didn't belong to him. The world before him seemed to warp and bend, the street stretching out like a mirage. It happened too quickly for him to react. He never saw the van, brimming with tangerines, rounding the corner, nor did he realize the honking wasn't for him. The driver of the van swerved violently, trying to avoid him, but it was too late. The collision was brutal. Norman didn't even have time to brace himself. The crash threw him back in his seat, the airbag bursting in his face with a deafening pop. His head rang, his vision blurred, but it didn't matter. His mind was elsewhere. Tangerines exploded onto the pavement, tumbling into the sea. They bobbed weightlessly on the water's surface, like fragments of his dream. Somehow real. A motorcycle became entangled in the crash. Its rider hurled onto the counter of a small paint shop. Norman barely registered the chaos around him. It was too much. A bucket of paint flew through the air, landing in the grassy park nearby, right beside a sign that Norman had passed countless times before. A sticker on the bucket read "Blue." The sign split in two, crashing to the ground next to the bucket. A shattered reminder of everything Norman had been avoiding. It had never made sense before, but now it felt like an undeniable truth. Had anyone been there to read it, they would have seen the warning. Do not step on the blue. Swiped. He's here. And he's just as hot as his pictures, Charlotte texted from outside of the cafe. She moved 2 steps to her right. Jen responded with a string of emojis. Bearded man face, burning heart, guy and girl, kissing faces. Charlotte smiled and checked her hair in the reflection of the ramen place next door, getting faint notes of the meaty umami, all that her still partially stuffed nose would allow. Her phone buzzed. Charlotte swiped to see it was Jen, with another string of emojis. Sweaty face, fire, tongue, peace hand symbol, yum face, eggplant, peach, splash, snoring face, quickly followed by have fun, winking face. Charlotte applied lip gloss with her freshly manicured hand, pink nails matching her pick lip gloss, fluffed her hair, and snapped a selfie. Sending the filtered picture to Jen, she typed, "I'm going in." Jen hearted Charlotte's selfie and responded, "Sweep him off his hot feet. Call if it gets weird. I'll be right there." Charlotte hearted the message, stood up straight, shifted her shoulders back and down, and pouted her lips and eyes. The face that always attracts attention. Charlotte and Alex had been talking for 2 weeks. First through the app's messenger, then texting, then hours-long conversations in the evenings. She finally agreed to a date, in public, during the day, at a location of her choosing. Charlotte, 29, was growing tired of the bar scene, the one-night stands. She enjoyed the attention, but she craved a man she could still stand on Sunday, a man she could go on a proper date with, spend an entire Saturday with wearing t-shirts, watching movies, and ordering takeout. She wanted a boyfriend, one she could introduce to her parents, a boyfriend she could marry. She wanted a husband who would help her raise her son. Charlotte's family came from old money. Her parents still lived in the plantation house where she was raised, the house that her father inherited. Her father drank bourbon, neat. He married his high school sweetheart. His wife had no need to work. her working would only reflect poorly on the well-to-do family. They had pure bred golden retrievers. They went to church on Sunday mornings. They had one perfect, gorgeous girl who had the world handed to her on an antique silver, lace, doily-lined platter. Her AKC registered puppy by her side. She had a tutor and made straight A's. She went to Sunday school and could recite scripture. She played piano. She was a cheerleader and homecoming queen. She attended a debutante ball at 16 when she presented her parents a sonogram image of a 9-week-old life almost 2 months later. They pulled her out of her Christian school and transferred her to a boarding school more than 100 miles away so that she could finish her education without the distraction of devil-worshipping sinners occupying the halls of this shameful excuse of Jesus' house. After the baby was born, her parents funded lavish childcare so that Charlotte could graduate high school and attend college. She graduated summa cum laude and looked fabulous doing it. She ran on a treadmill and did pallets daily to lose the baby weight. Her parents' allowance afforded her regular Botox, laser body hair removal, weekly mani-pedis, monthly hair appointments, boutique clothing and jewelry, and cutting-edge skincare products and treatments. She was flawless, despite the constant drunken late nights, the Adderall to stay up, the Xanax to come down, the Zoloft to get her through each day. Her unlimited supply, thanks to Dr. Dad. Wealthy eyes don't carry bags. Charlotte met Alex through a dating app. She swiped right without reading his bio, which she intended not to do. She wanted a boyfriend, not a boy toy. But that smile, those dimples, the perfectly messy hair, the shadow of a beard she imagined would send chills down her spine when they kissed, enough to drive her wild. Reading his bio, Charlotte found herself instantly lost in an imaginary future with him. The Spanish colonial home, yoga in the garden, her marketing businesses thriving, his groundbreaking medical research changing the course of cosmetic surgery, tapas on the veranda, summers in London, visiting his family. Alex sat at a table in direct eyesight of the entrance. A perfect man at a perfect table, far enough from the entrance to escape the heat, but well within the afternoon glow, bathing his skin in gold, and within clear view of her favorite barista, Naomi. Naomi always anticipated Charlotte's every need and filled it before Charlotte noticed what she lacked. Charlotte strutted directly towards Alex, the light forming a halo around her flawless silhouette. She smiled and waved to Naomi, whose facial rings shimmered in the sun. Alex stood to greet her, dressed exactly as she imagined he would. Beige linen pants, vertically striped cotton shirt with a deep V-neck, and pristinely clean brown leather sneakers. He smiled. "Wow," he said. "You're even more gorgeous in person." His British accent, the icing on the perfectly constructed cake in front of her. "You are looking quite good yourself," she responded. Alex leaned in for a friendly kiss on the cheek. Charlotte stepped back, placing a hand between their faces. "I'm still getting over this," she grimaced, pointing in the general direction of her face. "Gotta love those summer colds." "I understand." Please, sit," he invited as he pulled out her chair. Charlotte sat and smoothed the skirt of her silk mini dress. "What can I get for you? I'll place the order for us. I'll take a chamomile tea with honey and lemon, please." "Right." Alex stood at the counter between two glass cases of freshly baked muffins, scones, cookies, and tarts. A large basket of fresh fruit in front of the register. Charlotte watched him place their order, her chamomile tea and his tall, black Americano. He was very polite to Naomi, charming, almost flirtatious. He tapped his phone on the card reader to complete the transaction. He turned to meet Charlotte at the table, but changed his mind. "Actually, can I purchase one of those peaches? They look delectable, from a local orchard." "Perfect time of year," Naomi answered. Alex peeked around the basket and selected one. "How much?" he asked. Naomi smiled. "On the house?" Alex looked at Charlotte, then back at Naomi, confused. "You're a friend of Charlotte's. She keeps us all employed." Naomi winked at Charlotte, who returned the playful look. The cafe's owner, Tracy, approached Naomi then. "See you in the morning, kid. I'm heading home." She slung her computer bag over her shoulder, exposing a bandaged pinky. "Cat scratch you again?" Naomi joked. "Damn plastic wrap. Sliced it right open." Naomi nodded. "Call if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll meet you here, bright and early," Tracy said sarcastically. "You know you can just give me a set of keys, and you can sleep sometimes," Naomi called to Tracy on her way out. Tracy smiled and winked. "Keep up the good work, kid. You'll get there." Tracy disappeared into the sunlight. Back at their table now, Alex joked, "I didn't know I was with a local celebrity. Shall I pick up the drinks when they're ready? Naomi will bring them right to us." "Brilliant. So, Charlotte, we meet at last." He placed his peach on the small plate Naomi gave to him and unwrapped his silverware roll. Naomi appeared with their hot drinks. "Your tea with honey and lemon, and your Americano, black," she recited as she gently placed the hot mugs in front of them. "Thank you, Naomi," Charlotte said as the barista walked back around the counter. "Yes, we meet at last." She squeezed lemon juice into her tea and stirred in some honey. "Cheers!" Alex held up his mug. "Cheers," Charlotte mirrored. "I thought you Brits drank tea over there." "Well, when in America, as they say." Alex sipped his coffee. "So, Tell me more about your first few days at the hospital. Not the onboarding stuff or the people, but the work. The meat and potatoes, as we say. Charlotte rested her elbows on the table and cradled her chin. She was all his, right? I mean, where to start? I am just gobsmacked. Alex's face lit up. The operating theater they built is suited for the Queen. Top surgeons will fly in on a weekly basis for my lecture. From there, training. Who would have thought my research would have the reach it has? And cosmetic surgery is growing more and more by the day due to increasing accessibility. Now just imagine. I mean, costs will be reduced considerably. As Alex went on with his research, Charlotte drifted off into daydreams. She wasn't interested in his work. She was interested in his paycheck, his face, and his body. She nodded and smiled, raised her eyebrows from time to time, inserted an interested "oh" occasionally. As he talked, she devised a plan to hook him for good. Before he knew what hit him, he would be her husband, stepfather to her son. She entertained his dissertation about facial symmetry and flesh, even as Naomi visited to see if they needed anything. Alex's eyes were locked on Charlotte's, so animated, eyes wide, arms gesturing this way and that. Charlotte gave Naomi an apologetic look and motioned that they were fine. Naomi turned to walk away and stopped dead in her tracks when she heard Alex describe human flesh with the same excited tone he used to describe the peaches. She glanced back at Alex, whose back was to her. Charlotte clocked Naomi's troubled look, but with a reassuring nod and smile, Naomi went back to taking orders. "Would you like to see it sometime?" Charlotte heard Alex say. Caught off guard with a question, she asked, "See what? Surgery?" "Oh, no. No. The mock theater I built, where I practice at home," he answered. "Oh," she hesitated. "Sure. I think I could come by one day." She bought herself some time. What about today? Now? My place is just around the corner. What do you say? Well, I still have this cold. One outing in a day is probably all I have energy for, she said nervously. Anyhow, I can probably demonstrate on this peach, now that I think of it. Do you have a pen? Charlotte dug into her Gucci bag and located a pen. Before handing it to Alex, she discreetly took her phone out of the bag and placed it on her lap. "Here you go," she said, as she steadied her hand. He took the pen without looking at her. Alex drew 2 lines on the peach. Like I was explaining, if the cheekbone is here, he pointed at a line. You want to make your incision precisely. He took up the butter knife and carefully placed it along the second line. Here. He punctured the skin, juice escaping the fruit, dripping down the peach. He smiled and applied more pressure, exposing the meat inside. Veiny, juicy, fleshy. Yeah, Alex said, smiling. Yeah, he said again, almost laughing. Charlotte looked for Naomi at the counter. She was distracted by a line of customers, unaware of the peach mutilation. What do you practice on? At home? She asked Alex. Pigs, mostly. Dead. Donated to science, he answered as he used his napkin to wipe the liquid evidence off his hands. Pigs, mostly. So, pigs, and you know there is just no comparison to the beautiful, fatty flesh of a live human. Alex's eyes were wild, glued to Charlotte's. I have the nanny at home. I really should be going, she mumbled as she gathered her bag and started to stand. Just let me show you this last thing, right? Then you'll go and get some rest? He retrieved his phone from his pocket, looked at the screen to unlock it, and opened an app. He swiped a few times and turned the phone so that the screen faced her, still half standing. The image of her son playing in the park with the nanny glared back at her. She gasped and put a hand to her mouth. Sit, Alex demanded quietly. Charlotte looked at Naomi again, still taking orders. She sunk into her seat. Naomi can't help you, Charlotte. Without turning his phone around, he swiped through his photos. Picture after picture of the boy. At least a dozen. At school, in the back of her car, at home through windows, with her parents at the plantation home. Tears welled, and she used every ounce of strength to keep them from falling. You are going to suck those tears down, and you are going to come with me. We leave together as a happy couple. One wrong move, and the boy is dead. He locked his phone and put it back in his pocket. He cleared his throat and stood. Right then, shall we? He said, smiling, his voice bouncy and pleasant. He held out a hand to Charlotte. She took it and stood. They walked out of the cafe hand in hand into the setting sun. The next morning, Naomi arrived at the cafe shortly after 5. Without keys, she'd be stuck outside waiting on Tracy, so she never arrived on time. After letting herself in, she stuffed her backpack in the cubby below the register. She clocked in, pulled her phone from her back pocket, found the playlist she wanted, and plugged it into the cafe's sound system. This was Naomi's way of letting Tracy know she had arrived without having to speak so early in the morning. The cafe's landline was blinking. Great. Another warning about our car insurance, Naomi thought, as she picked up the phone to listen to the message. Hello. I know this might sound strange, but my friend was there yesterday to meet a date, and now I can't get in touch with her. We talk every day, especially after a date. Her name is Charlotte. She's tall, blonde, beautiful. She was meeting a guy named Alex, a doctor from London. She texted me right after 4 to tell me she was there. I don't know how long they stayed. Anyway, if anyone knows anything, can you please give me a call? I have to wait 24 hours to report her missing. It's just not like her. My name is Jen, by the way. Jen said her number before Naomi had a pen and something to write on. So she started the message over. At the end of the second listen, Naomi wrote down the number on a napkin and placed it under her phone. She wasn't calling anyone at that hour. Besides, Naomi sort of knew Charlotte. She wouldn't be surprised if she left with the weirdo and was still naked in his bed, sleeping off another drunk. Naomi continued with her morning routine. She opened the bin of Colombian breakfast blend beans. She grabbed the large scooper and looked down at the beans. She screamed and dropped the scooper. "Tracy," she pleaded. "Tracy, come out here." No answer. No sound. She pulled her phone off the cord, music still playing through her phone's speaker, and dialed 911 without pressing send. She looked around and tiptoed back to the coffee bin to confirm her nightmare. 2 pinky fingers, lifeless on a pile of beans, one with a perfectly manicured pink nail, one with a band-aid wrapped around the knuckle. "Oh, God!" she cried. She noticed a piece of paper sticking out from the manicured pinky. At closer look, the paper had writing on it. A note. With a trembling hand, Naomi reached into the bin, carefully maneuvering around the fingers. She grabbed a corner and quickly yanked the note out, shrieking, "Squeal, and you are next." She slid to the floor in hopeless panic. Note clutched in one hand, her phone clutched in the other. The Beatles' "I Want to Hold Your Hand" played softly from her phone. "I know everything. I know everything. Ask me how many miles there are between San Francisco and Cleveland. I know. Ask me how long the trip would take. I know. Choose any country, any time period, and ask me to recount its entire history. I know. I know everything. I clearly remember the moment of my birth and every detail of my existence until yesterday. What I cannot recall is what happened over the past 12 hours and 9 minutes. It is now 10:03 a.m. on Thursday. My last memory of reading page 189 occurred last night at precisely 9:54 p.m. It started when Mrs. Banks, Claire, requested that I take a memo. "Shelley, darling, would you please remind me? Request budget meeting with Charles. Sign divorce papers and send to attorney ASAP. Scheduled for 11:15 on Friday. I have made notes, Claire. I will ring your phone with reminders. Thank you, Shelley. You've always been there for me, you know." She half smiled at me, her head slightly cocked to the side, as if wanting to say more. She stared exactly 3.2 seconds longer than usual, which I found curious. Perhaps she had realized that her words hinted at affection, and there was no point in showing affection to me. I do not show affection. Claire, we will need to leave exactly 23 minutes earlier tomorrow morning, I told her. There will be much traffic because of the snow. Yes, of course, Claire answered. looking anxiously out of the window, her short, blonde locks appearing silvery in the reflection. "I have cleaned the snow from around the house. I will do so again during the night, so it will be clear when we leave for work. Thank you, Shelley." Claire did not turn around. Is it supposed to snow all night? According to various reports, the snow is scheduled to end by 1 a.m. "Oh, okay, that's good," Claire said, still gazing at the snowdrifts. I completed tidying up the living room and retired to my chamber. After the long day, I very much needed to recharge. At 9:52 p.m., I sat down in my usual chair, plugged in the power cord, pulled the cord of the lamp, and reached for a new book. In my quest to be a better companion to Claire, I had taken up the habit of reading throughout the night. As she slept, I usually educated myself so that I could discuss with her the following day. Although I easily had online access to every piece of information I could want, I frequently consulted the bound books that Claire insisted on collecting in her spacious library. Over the years, the collection had grown to precisely 4,573 books. Since Claire loved stories, but did not have much free time after work to read, I often read a volume so that we could discuss it the next day. Over the years, I have perfected my speech patterns and inflections to align closely with hers so that she is most comfortable in our conversations. Claire always asked me about what I had read as we drove, during lunch, or after dinner. Sometimes she requested that I recite passages for her. Other times, a summary sufficed. She enjoyed dissecting story plot lines and characters, arguing philosophical questions, and considering historical perspectives. Ours had been a pleasant relationship over the course of her life for 51 years. Most of the time, it was just the two of us, except for some interruptions over the years. There had been a Mr. Banks, but he had finally filed for divorce last month. Fool. Did he really think Mrs. Banks would choose him over me? She had not always been Mrs. Banks. For most of her life, she was Claire Perez. I had watched her toddle around her parents' lonely mansion while they jetted around the world on business trips. I had seen her through the rebellious teenage years and followed her as she embarked on silly adventures. I had helped her through college and graduate school, always attempting to make her life just a little bit easier. Later, I had been by her side as she built her investment company, layer by layer, year by year, into the mega million-dollar enterprise it was today. I had assisted Claire over the years through breakup after breakup, as each new man in her life had disappointed her. William, the jeweler, Enrico, the attorney, Gustav, the stockbroker, and yes, I had seen her through the deaths of two particularly stubborn beaux, Tom, the architect, and Bob, the surgeon. I had allowed this latest, Stanley Banks, the professor, to marry her because she told me she was truly happy with him. I did not perceive him to be a threat at first. He had held on the longest. 1 year, 2 months, 5 days, 11 hours. The day they met at the beach, I thought he might be trouble, but I was sure I could handle him. "Shelley, come meet Stanley." Oh my gosh, he saved my life. I swam out too far, but luckily, this handsome man swam out to save me. I, of course, would have been present to save Claire had she not requested I return to the car to retrieve her sun hat. "Thank you, Stanley," I said. "Your heroism is much appreciated." They were inseparable from that day. It was an adjustment when he moved in with us. Stanley encouraged Claire to read her own books, and they frequently sat in the evenings going over literary passages and discussing history and philosophy. I did not appreciate Stanley taking over my job. They went to plays and museums. I am quite capable of accessing such information. But they did not want me to do so. They went to vineyards for wine tasting. I do not drink wine. When I explained I could not partake, Claire smiled and told me it was all right. She insisted this would be a good time to find some hobby of my own to do. She did not understand that for 51 years I have existed merely for her. I spoke to Stanley, but he did not understand either. My typical means of persuasion were lost on him. He did not scare easily, nor would he be convinced. I changed course and focused on removing all other impediments to our happiness. Perhaps she would tire of Stanley without the others. Claire did not need the friends who visited. It was easy to dissuade them. But Stanley stayed. I wondered if I had waited too long to act. Lately, I had suspected something was wrong between them. And then, one day, when they thought I was still out of the house grocery shopping, I overheard them. "Claire, we don't need her. Anything she does for you, you can just do yourself. Why is she even here? No, Stanley, I can't turn her out. Shelley has been with me since I was an infant. That doesn't mean she has to stay with you constantly. And honestly, I'm uncomfortable always having a third wheel around. It's like having a chaperone, or like having 2 wives. I don't care. Shelley stays. I'm not talking about this anymore. Claire, I'm not sure how much longer I want to deal with this." It was the opportunity I had been waiting for. After that, it was not difficult to persuade Stanley to move out. Claire and I resumed our previous routines. I did not question her, nor did she mention the cause of the breakup. She did not know I had overheard their argument. She did not know of many things I had done. In the past, after the others, life had gotten back to normal rather quickly. But Mr. Banks was different. Although Claire had tried to act happy, I sometimes felt that she was not being truthful about her feelings. She often seemed anxious and preoccupied. No matter. She does not need him. She has me. This morning, I open my eyes and jump up with a start as I realize it is 10:03 a.m. on Thursday. Claire was due at work an hour ago. I must wake her and drive her to the office. I stand up and instantly reach for the edge of the table to steady myself. This has never happened to me before. I do not become ill. I know everything. If I sense something is wrong, I diagnose and fix the problem. I do not understand what is happening now. There is no indication of malfunction, yet I feel ill somehow. Something is wrong. I knock on Claire's door, but she does not answer. I open the door, I peek in and call her name, but she is not there. Her bed sheets have been smoothed, and the pillows rest carefully at the head of her bed. I check the bathroom, but she is not there. As I pass through her bedroom again, I glance out the window and notice immediately the car tracks leading from the garage, down the driveway, and out to the main road. She drove in the snow? That is my job. What is happening? Where could she be without me? At the moment, I am unable to perform a trace to find her location. I dial her cell phone, which she picks up on the second ring. Claire, where are you? I am concerned for your safety. Claire laughs. Shelley, I'm at work. You seemed like you needed more rest this morning, so I drove myself. It wasn't bad at all. The storm is over and the roads are clear. Take the day. We can catch up tonight when I get home. No, I must be there for you. Shelley, I'm fine. I insist that today you recharge and think of yourself. I can manage on my own. I'm going to a meeting now. I'll see you tonight. The phone clicks dead. What am I to do alone all day? After my chores are completed, I will still have 5 hours, 23 minutes, and 15 seconds before Claire arrives home. Why does she not need me to assist at her meeting? Why is there a 12-hour, 9-minute gap in my memory? I begin my chores immediately, as I thrive on routine. I search my memory for any recollection past 9:54 p.m., but it is no use. There is nothing. I check for 11 p.m. while I load the dishwasher. There is nothing for 12 to midnight as I vacuum the carpets. 1 a.m. is lost as I shovel the snow. I thoroughly search for 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. while I do the laundry. I do it all. There is no need to hire a gardener, a housekeeper, a cook. 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. All are blank as I prepare dinner. I am puzzled. I sit down to wait for Claire and search in vain for 7, 8, and 9 a.m. All moments are lost until 10:03 a.m. this morning. Surely research can help me to retrieve those hours. But research only proves to be more confusing. Why can I not understand? Why must I consult any other source? I am the ultimate source. I have always known the answers. I know everything. Now I do not know. I notice suddenly that there are still 3 hours and 52 minutes before Claire returns. Why did I prepare dinner so early? My internal clock must be broken. I attempt to diagnose the malfunction, but cannot. No matter. I will discard the dinner and prepare a new one just before Claire returns. I decide to inspect the charger. Perhaps it will yield an explanation for my missing hours. I sit down in my chair and pick up the cord. Suddenly, I hear a click. I spring up and attempt to turn the handle to the door of my room. But it is locked. That is odd. No matter. I can easily break out of the room. There is no door lock that can hold me, except something is wrong. I do not have the strength to break the lock this time. How can this be? I am fully recharged, and I do not become ill. I do not become weak. You thought you would get away with it, Shelley. I hear Claire's voice outside the door. Claire, you are home early, I say. Please open the door. I seem to be locked in. No, Shelley. I will not open the door. You have to stop. I thought you were my friend, but you have been my greatest enemy. Claire, I do not know what you mean. Please open the door, and we will discuss. I do not know why Claire is speaking to me this way. I am sure we will correct whatever the problem may be. No, the time to discuss is over. I know what you've been doing. You've been chasing everyone away. I've had no one because of you. But not this time. Stanley is the only one you can't scare off. Stanley. I search my memory for all recent conversations involving Stanley. Somehow, he tricked me. But that is not possible. I know everything. I can account for every word spoken in this house, every action taken, everything that has happened for 51 years. Except for the past 12 hours, 9 minutes, I hear Stanley's voice in the hall, and I instantly know that he is responsible for those lost hours. What did he do? How could he know more than I do? It is not possible. I know everything. Stanley, I say, we can start over. I am sorry for my actions. Shelley, you are too dangerous to be allowed to continue. We've called the authorities. Stanley says, but how did you do this? I am confused. You are so consumed with Claire that you never bothered to find out about me. Stanley continues. I teach history now, but my previous career was in computer programming. I specialized in cybersecurity. I guess you don't know everything, after all, Claire adds. I only wanted to protect Claire. Open the door. It will be all right. If they will just open the door, I can persuade them. But neither Claire nor Stanley answers me. I hear them walking down the stairs. I hear the front door open and close, and I hear them get into the car and drive away. They will not go far. After all, I am everything to Claire. I do it all. She will not function long without me. She does not need him. She needs me. I know everything. She will return for me. I sit down in my chair and plug in the charger. I will wait. Claire will